Shikamaru versus Hidan. The cold wind howled through the dense forest as Shikamaru Nara stood alone, facing Hidan, the immortal zealot of Akatsuki. But this was revenge. Hidan had brutally slain Asuma Sarutobi, Shikamaru's mentor, in front of his very eyes. Now it was time to settle the score. But how do you defeat someone who cannot die? For any other shinobi, this would have been an impossible battle. But Shikamaru was not the same as any shinobi. He didn't need violence. He needed a plan. Shikamaru knew Hidan's fighting style. The Akatsuki member relied on a ritual-based curse technique. He only needed to consume a drop of his enemy's blood to link their fates. From there, every injury he inflicted on himself would be mirrored on his opponent. But what if the blood wasn't from the real target? In the heat of battle, Shikamaru pulled a masterstroke of deception. He tricked Hidan into using Kakuzu's blood instead of his own. Thinking he had Shikamaru trapped in his ritual, Hidan gleefully stabbed himself in the heart, only to realize too late that the pain belonged to Kakuzu, his own partner. It was a moment of sheer brilliance. Shikamaru had turned Hidan's greatest weapon against him. As Hidan raged, Shikamaru led him deeper into the forest, where he had prepared his real trap. Using explosive tags and chakra-infused wires, he manipulated Hidan's movements, gradually cornering him. With each step, Hidan fell further into Shikamaru's web. And then, the final play. Shikamaru activated his trap, dropping Hidan into a massive pit he had prepared in advance. Hidan, struggling against the shadow-binding jutsu, could do nothing as Shikamaru tossed a single kunai, igniting the countless explosive tags wrapped around the pit. As the smoke cleared, Hidan was buried beneath tons of rubble, alive, but permanently sealed. A moment before we move to the next battle. I want to thank you all for supporting us, enjoying our content. For the love of Naruto's fans, we really appreciate it. If you love what we are doing, please leave us a like, share, and comment for bringing video to more Naruto's fans around. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Now, Shino versus Kankuro. The Chunin exams were in full swing, and two skilled strategists faced off. Shino Aburame, the master of insects, and Kankuro, the puppet user of the sand. Unlike the flashy fights of their peers, this was a battle of subtlety, deception, and manipulation. From the start, Kankuro relied on his puppet, Crow, using it to fight at a distance. He assumed Shino would fall prey to its hidden weapons, but Shino wasn't fooled. He ignored the puppet completely, and instead focused on Kankuro himself. Using his parasitic insects, Shino secretly placed a female beetle onto Kankuro. These insects emitted a pheromone that would guide the rest of his swarm, allowing Shino to track Kankuro's every move. Kankuro, believing his puppet could keep Shino at bay, was completely unaware of the trap closing around him. Then, at the perfect moment, Shino launched a fake attack, forcing Kankuro to dodge. That was when the real plan unfolded. Shino's insects swarmed Kankuro from behind, draining his chakra. The match was over before Kankuro even knew he had lost. Kankuro had underestimated Shino, believing him to be slow and passive. But in reality, Shino had won the fight before it even started. In the world of shinobi, sometimes the deadliest weapon is waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Shino versus Zaku. The Chunin exams had no shortage of intense battles, but few were as methodically calculated as Shino versus Zaku. Zaku, a sound ninja, relied on his air pressure blasts, using specialized tubes in his arms to launch devastating attacks. He was arrogant, believing raw force would overpower strategy. Shino, as always, was patient. He didn't rush in. He studied his opponent. Zaku's confidence led him to pretend his arms were injured, making Shino believe he had only one functional arm. But Shino didn't buy it. He predicted Zaku would try a surprise counterattack with both arms. So, Shino set a trap. Using his insects, he secretly blocked the air pressure vents in Zaku's arms. The moment Zaku attempted his most powerful attack, his own arms exploded from within. Zaku had played himself. His arrogance had been his downfall, and Shino's quiet, methodical planning had ensured victory without ever needing physical strength. Shikamaru versus Temari. The Chunin exams had showcased incredible battles, but none displayed pure tactical mastery like this one. Shikamaru Nara versus Temari was a lesson in foresight, calculation, and battlefield control. Shikamaru, a self-proclaimed lazy genius, had no flashy jutsu, no overwhelming power. His opponent, Temari, was the complete opposite: aggressive, fast, and equipped with devastating wind-based attacks. On paper, she had every advantage. Shikamaru's approach was meticulous. Instead of engaging directly, he used the environment to manipulate Temari's position. First, he lured her into areas with heavy shadows, allowing his shadow possession jutsu to stretch farther. Then, he used his jacket as a makeshift parachute, floating it above to cast additional shadows. Finally, he exploited the holes left by Naruto's previous fight, using them to extend his shadow even further without Temari realizing. Each move forced Temari into a narrower and narrower space until she unknowingly stepped into his trap. When she finally noticed, it was too late. Temari stood frozen. Shikamaru's shadow had reached her from behind, through the holes in the arena. She had been outmaneuvered without ever seeing it coming. And then, in a moment of classic Shikamaru fashion, he simply gave up. "I could have won," he said with a sigh, proving his point without even needing the victory. Might Guy versus Madara. The Fourth Great Ninja War had reached its most intense phase. The battlefield was engulfed in destruction as the legendary Madara Uchiha stood unchallenged, wielding the power of the Ten Tails. The allied shinobi forces had thrown everything at him, yet nothing seemed to work. But then, one man stepped forward, the embodiment of raw willpower and the strongest taijutsu user of his generation, Might Guy. At first glance, this battle may seem like a straightforward clash of power, but beneath the surface, it was a masterclass in coordinated strategy. Guy wasn't fighting alone. His comrades, Kakashi, Minato, Gaara, and Rock Lee, worked in perfect harmony to create an opening for the most devastating strike of his life. The key to this plan was eliminating the obstacles in Guy's path, while ensuring he could focus entirely on Madara. Force the ground beneath Guy to prevent any unnecessary loss of momentum. Every second counted. Every move had to be precise. And then it happened. Guy, having opened the eighth gate of death, transformed into a crimson beast, his blood boiling under the sheer force of his own power. The battlefield trembled as he moved at speeds beyond human comprehension. He vanished, then reappeared within striking distance. It was Evening Elephant, a barrage of air pressure strikes so powerful they distorted space itself. Madara, a warrior who had fought gods, was overwhelmed. The moment Guy's final blow landed, a shockwave erupted across the battlefield. Bones cracked. Space itself seemed to ripple from the force. Madara, the man who had mocked the efforts of countless shinobi, staggered back, a look of genuine admiration in his eyes. "This is the strongest taijutsu I have ever seen," he admitted, a rare acknowledgement from a man who viewed most opponents as insects. Might Guy knew the price of opening the eighth gate. He wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting to buy time, to weaken Madara for those who would finish the fight. His body was breaking apart, yet he kept pushing forward. Even Madara, revived as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, felt the weight of this moment. He acknowledged Guy not as an ordinary ninja, but as a true warrior, a man whose fists spoke louder than any jutsu ever could. Deidara versus Gaara. The sky above the hidden sand village darkened as a massive winged clay bird soared high, carrying a lone figure, Deidara, the explosive artist of Akatsuki. His mission was clear: capture Gaara, the Kazekage, and bring him back to the organization. But Gaara was no ordinary opponent. As the wielder of Shukaku, his sand shield was nearly impenetrable, making him one of the toughest Kage to defeat in direct combat. This battle was a clash of intellect and adaptability, a game of chess played at high speed in the sky. Deidara, despite his overconfidence, knew raw power alone wouldn't work against Gaara. He needed a strategy, and he devised one that was as creative as it was ruthless. Deidara's first move was information gathering. Flying high above the village, he released small clay birds, blending them seamlessly into the sky. They weren't meant to strike. They were scouts, helping him understand how Gaara's sand worked, and soon he made a critical discovery. The sand from Gaara's gourd was far more reactive and faster than the sand from the environment. With this knowledge, Deidara formed his plan. He engaged Gaara in an aerial battle, luring him into a defensive stance. From the ground, Gaara's people watched in awe as their Kazekage effortlessly blocked and neutralized every explosive Deidara threw at him. It seemed like an impossible fight for Deidara, until he made his next move. Deidara took the battle a step further, targeting not Gaara himself, but the sand village below. He sent a massive clay bomb straight toward the village, threatening to obliterate everything and everyone Gaara had sworn to protect. It was a brutal psychological play, forcing the Kazekage into an impossible decision: defend himself or save his people. Gaara, true to his nature, didn't hesitate. He diverted nearly all his sand to block the explosion, forming a massive protective shield over the village. In that brief moment, his personal defense weakened, and Deidara was ready. While Gaara was distracted, Deidara revealed his true trump card. Earlier in the fight, he had subtly planted microscopic explosive clay into Gaara's sand, hiding it among the very substance Gaara relied on for defense. Now, with a single detonating seal, he activated it. The sand, Gaara's greatest shield, became his downfall. The hidden explosives ignited from within, shattering his defense and leaving him vulnerable. In a final decisive strike, Deidara's clay hand smashed through Gaara's defenses, knocking him unconscious and sending him plummeting to the ground. Victory here was about deception, patience, and manipulation. Deidara had exploited Gaara's greatest strength and turned it into a weakness. Despite Gaara's overwhelming power, he was defeated not by superior jutsu, but by a carefully orchestrated plan. Kakashi versus Pain. The sky over Konoha darkened as Pain, the leader of the Akatsuki, launched his attack on the Hidden Leaf village. Buildings crumbled, shinobi fell, and the air was thick with destruction. But in the midst of the chaos, one man stood firm: Hatake Kakashi, the copy ninja. He knew he was outmatched. He knew he was fighting a force capable of annihilating entire villages. But he also knew something else. He had to buy time, gather intel, and protect his home. Kakashi understood that blindly attacking Pain would be suicide. He had seen firsthand how effortlessly Pain's Shinra Tensei repelled attacks. So instead of rushing in, he analyzed. He sent in a lightning clone to probe Pain's abilities, carefully observing the cooldown period of his repulsion technique. That single discovery would later prove vital to Naruto's victory. Kakashi wasn't alone. He knew he couldn't defeat Pain by himself, so he coordinated with Choza and Choji Akimichi to form a plan. If they could trap Pain in a moment of vulnerability, Kakashi could land a decisive blow. The moment came. Kakashi burrowed underground, a classic yet effective shinobi tactic, while Choza and Choji charged forward. As expected, Pain used Shinra Tensei to repel them, but Kakashi was already waiting beneath him. At the exact second Pain's technique went into cooldown, Kakashi emerged with a lightning-infused kunai, aiming for a direct strike. Kakashi's blade was inches away. 1 second more, and Pain would have been struck down. But fate had other plans. Another of Pain's bodies, the Asura Path, intervened at the last moment, taking the hit for the Diva Path. The attack failed, but Kakashi wasn't done yet. Even in failure, Kakashi adapted instantly. He used his Sharingan to anticipate Pain's next move, and teleported a missile away using Kamui, saving Choji's life at the last possible second. But using Kamui at such a level came at a cost. His chakra was nearly drained. Pain, unfazed, prepared to deliver the final blow. Kakashi, exhausted but unwavering, made one last request: for Choji to escape and deliver the intel he had gathered about Pain's ability. And then, in a moment of silent resolve, Kakashi fell. But in death, he had already won. This battle was about intelligence, sacrifice, and ensuring the next generation had what they needed to win. Because of Kakashi's strategic mind, Naruto would later arrive with the knowledge to counter Shinra Tensei, turning the tide of the war. Kakashi may have lost the fight, but he ensured Konoha had a chance to win the war. Minato versus Obito. The night sky burned with chaos. The Nine Tails rampaged through Konoha, buildings reduced to rubble, screams echoing in the distance. But amidst the destruction, one battle unfolded in the shadows, a battle of intellect and raw speed. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, had finally confronted the masked man responsible for this catastrophe. Obito Uchiha, his old student and now using the mysterious power of Kamui. Obito was confident. He had already bypassed Konoha's defenses, released the Nine Tails, and evaded all counterattacks with ease. He believed he was untouchable, but he had made a grave mistake. He had underestimated the Yellow Flash. The moment the fight began, Minato didn't rush in blindly. Instead, he did what he did best. He observed. The first exchange was quick. Obito phased through Minato's kunai, completely unharmed. But for Minato, that one moment was enough. Obito's ability wasn't true intangibility. He wasn't untouchable. He had to become solid to attack. That meant he had a vulnerability, a tiny window of opportunity. Minato just needed perfect timing, and that was something he had mastered better than anyone. The next exchange was flawless execution. As Obito lunged forward, reaching for Minato's shoulder, the Hokage threw a marked kunai past him. A move that seemed like a miss, but it was bait. At the exact moment Obito materialized to grab him, Minato instantly teleported to the kunai, dodging Obito's attack by a fraction of a second. Before Obito could react, Minato spun mid-air and struck a full-force Rasengan straight into Obito's back. The masked man crashed to the ground, gasping in shock. In just 2 moves, Minato had not only outsped, but completely outmaneuvered him. He hadn't just countered Kamui, he had dissected it, exposed its weakness, and exploited it all in the span of seconds. Obito was rattled and injured, and had no choice. He was forced to retreat, leaving the battlefield in Minato's hands. Minato had proven why he was feared as the greatest shinobi of his time for his speed, and also his ability to instantly analyze and counter even the most broken abilities. Jubito versus Naruto, Sasuke, Minato, and Tobirama. The battlefield was in ruins. The sky burned with divine energy as Obito Uchiha, now the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, loomed over his enemies. His transformation into Jubito had pushed him beyond human limits. His body was covered in a divine aura, truth-seeking orbs floating around him like miniature black suns. Every move he made sent ripples through space itself. He was no longer just a shinobi, he was a god. Against him stood 4 warriors: Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, Minato Namikaze, and Tobirama Senju. This was a battle of strategy, timing, and perfect execution. From the start, it was clear. No ordinary attack could harm Jubito. His truth-seeking orbs disintegrated everything they touched, and his body rejected all conventional jutsu. But Naruto and Sasuke weren't just throwing attacks blindly. They were analyzing, adapting, and coordinating. Their plan began with a fusion of 2 of the most dangerous techniques: Naruto's wind style, Rasen Shuriken, and Sasuke's Amaterasu. Rasen Shuriken provided cutting force, while Amaterasu ensured that once the attack landed, it would burn endlessly. It was a calculated strike designed to bypass Jubito's regeneration and truth-seeking orbs. But getting that attack to land was the real challenge. Jubito was too fast, too powerful, and nearly untouchable. That's where Minato and Tobirama came in. Minato had already marked Jubito with his Flying Thunder God Seal, a remnant from an earlier clash. This allowed him and Tobirama, both masters of teleportation, to manipulate the battlefield in an instant. The moment Naruto and Sasuke unleashed their attack, Minato teleported toward Jubito, appearing right in front of him as bait. At the last second, Tobirama switched Minato's position with Jubito, using Flying Thunder God to swap their places. Before Jubito could react, he was standing exactly where Minato had been, a direct collision course with the Rasen Shuriken Amaterasu fusion. There was no time to escape. The attack struck him head-on. The Rasen Shuriken tore through his defenses, slicing into his divine form, while Amaterasu's black flames began to consume him from within. For the first time since becoming Jubito, Obito screamed in pain. This moment was more than just a successful attack. It was a turning point. The invincible god had been hurt, proving that even the most unstoppable force could be countered with strategy, teamwork, and precise execution. Naruto versus Pain. The Hidden Leaf Village lay in ruins. Smoke rose from the shattered buildings, and the once thriving village had been reduced to rubble. At the center of the destruction stood Pain, the man who had declared himself a god, wielding the power of the Rinnegan. He had crushed Konoha with a single technique, leaving behind only despair. He wasn't fighting a single opponent. He was fighting 6 at once. Each of the 6 paths of pain had a unique ability, and attacking blindly would mean certain defeat. So he used his head. The first phase of his plan was to divide and conquer. He targeted the animal path first, knowing that it was responsible for summoning Pain's powerful creatures. Using Sage Mode enhanced speed, he closed the distance before the summons could appear, obliterating the animal path with a single Rasengan. Next, he created multiple shadow clones, but these weren't just for offense, they were for data collection. Each clone observed and analyzed, feeding information back to Naruto in real time. He quickly realized the Predapath could absorb chakra-based attacks, so instead of using ninjutsu, he had Fukasaku and Shima take it down using Toad Genjutsu. But the most brilliant strategy came when Naruto set up a layered feint against the Deva Path, Pain's most powerful body. First, he threw a smoke bomb, obscuring the battlefield. From within the smoke, a Rasen Shuriken shot out, one of Naruto's deadliest techniques. The Deva Path, acting on instinct, activated Shinra Tensei to repel it. But that's where Naruto's genius came in. The Rasen Shuriken was not only an attack, it was a transformed shadow clone. As soon as the Deva Path activated Shinra Tensei, the disguised clone reverted to its normal form and grabbed onto Pain, immobilizing him for a split second. It was the perfect opening. Naruto hurled a second Rasen Shuriken straight at Pain, this time a real one. For a moment, it seemed like Naruto had won. The Rasen Shuriken soared towards Pain, ready to strike. But just before impact, Shinra Tensei's cooldown ended, and Pain repelled the attack at the last second. Despite this, the battle had already shifted. Naruto had forced Pain into a defensive position, proving that he was fighting with intelligence, deception, and strategy. It was a declaration. Naruto had gone from the village's most unpredictable troublemaker to a warrior capable of outthinking even the strongest enemies. Thanks for watching till the end. See ya.